Let me start, though, with the big story of the moment. And it's a little like tinker, journalist, politician, spy, because there's been plenty happening of late in the media and politics when it comes to espionage, foreign interference and our relationship with China. The Prime Minister even announced a new joint task force for ASIO, Defence Intelligence and the AFP today.
Foreign interference comes from many different sources, and it's important that we have the capacity to deal with it. It's an evolving threat, and it's also been a building and evolving response.
Media have been big players in this emerging issue, breaking stories, adding to the sum total of public information and also adding to heightened concerns.
The all-powerful Chinese President Xi Jinping is not a regular viewer of 60 Minutes, but he'll certainly want to see this story. And that's because, from his point of view, it's all about the unthinkable. A Chinese spy, one of his own people, is betraying him, breaking ranks and defecting to the West. Australia, to be more specific.
This 60 Minutes exclusive, shared with the Nine media by reporters Nick McKenzie, Grace Tobin and Paul Sakal, caused one hell of a stir. One angle was Nick Zhao, a Melbourne businessman and Liberal Party member who went to ASIO with claims he was offered $1 million bankrolling to run for federal parliament as a Chinese Communist Party plant, a real-life Manchurian candidate, before he died of an apparent drug overdose in March. But even more sensationally, Nine media interviewed Wang Lijiang, a 27-year-old man who claims to be a Chinese spy and is seeking asylum in Australia. He wants a protection visa. In Cold War parlance, he wants to defect to Australia. And he claims he'll bring state secrets from espionage operations in Taiwan, Australia and Hong Kong.
Is it right that you helped organise the Causeway Bay bookshop kidnapping?
You
may say so, as I was one of the insiders who ordered the task.
These were startling claims, and as we know, people will do all sorts of things, say all sorts of things, to get residency in Australia. But this story had the added imprimatur of open support from the chair of Parliament's Intelligence and Security Oversight Committee, Liberal MP Andrew Hastie, a robust China critic.
This is a state-sponsored attempt to infiltrate our Parliament, and Australians should be very concerned about this.
And after the story caused a sensation, the response from ASIO unusually publicly confirmed the main elements. ASIO Director General Mike Burgess said he took the allegations seriously and that Australians can be reassured that ASIO was previously aware of matters that have been reported today and has been actively investigating them. He went on to talk about the real threat to our nation from hostile foreign intelligence operations. So there was a big scoop, a dramatic response and confirmation it all stacked up. Well, maybe not quite. On the weekend, some journalists tracked down sources inside the intelligence agencies downplaying Wang's story. China spy farce, said the front page of the Daily Telegraph above Sharry Markson's story about agencies casting doubts over the defector's bold claims. At the Australian, National Security Editor Paul Maley reported likewise. In the end, it took Australian security agencies less than a week to conclude self-proclaimed Chinese spy Wang Lijiang was not a highly trained intelligent operative dispatched by Beijing to wreak havoc on the nation's enemies and was, at most, a bit player on the fringes of the espionage community. And Associate Editor Brad Norrington at The Australian reported separately that there were concerns at senior levels of the Intelligence and Security Committee about Hastie's call for an alleged former Chinese spy to be granted asylum ahead of the formal assessing of his case. So there we go, big claims, dramatic reactions, then scepticism and Chinese whispers over this story. China, of course, says Wang is not a spy. In fact, they dismiss him as a criminal fraudster. A global newsletter for China watchers, China Nikan, has published a piece highlighting doubts about Wang's claims. It points out that the vague nature of his stories and notes the intelligence operations he claims to have been involved in have all previously been publicly reported. It says he made errors about the names of Chinese organisations and questions his knowledge of Hong Kong politics. The assessment also notes how unusual it would be for such a young agent to be involved in major espionage activities in 3 countries over a relatively short period. And it raised questions about how Wang could have been tasked in Hong Kong without good English or sent to Taiwan on a South Korean passport if he didn't speak Korean. There are grounds for scepticism. Scepticism is always a good thing. It is little more than a week ago, though, that former Prime Minister Paul Keating was attacking the media, 9 media in particular, over China coverage.
There's alarm in Australia at the scale and speed of China's rise, and this comes out particularly in the hysteria in the media, especially the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, but run up often clearly in the rear by The Australian.
When the 9 media stories broke just days after that, it looked embarrassing for Keating. But who could be so sure now? Perhaps Wang has created so much of a stir, his life could be in danger back in China and he must be given asylum regardless. Perhaps he has some connection and knowledge of espionage activities. Perhaps everything he has said is true. But that would raise the question of why he would need to go public, why ASIO wouldn't have handled all this very quietly.